Okay, and we're live on the Niche Agent. So today we've got a great guest. It's Linda Schneider. You are the newsletter goddess. So Linda, why don't you take a second about yourself and tell us a bit why you're here and what you do?
All right, thanks a lot, Ryan. Well, my name is Linda Schneider, and I never referred to myself as the newsletter goddess until now, but there we go. Let's see, I started real estate in 1984, way back in the dark ages, and I started real estate because I was a training design consultant for Franklin Covey, and one of our clients was a large regional real estate company, and that's what got me interested. So I took my real estate license and worked part-time on the side, and at that time, I had one of those really great old school brokers, and she made me send newsletters, knock on cold doors, and call at least 5 past clients a day. That was her entire training program. And she said, that's the way you market yourself in real estate, and that's how you become a success. And she was right. So 4 years later, that was in Salt Lake City at the time. 4 years later, I had an occasion to leave the city and take a job somewhere else. And because I had been sending my newsletter this entire time, I actually had a pretty robust database of past clients and centers of influence that was now worth something.
Right.
And I actually sold that list of clients. Now, in those days, it was $60,000 was a big property. That was a big sale. Yeah. So I sold the list for $22,000 cash.
Wow.
It was a big deal at the time, but I wouldn't have had that if I didn't have the newsletter, and that's kind of what got me started on the whole newsletter thing.
Okay. Yeah, and that's amazing because a lot of people talk about wanting to sell their business down the road, and they never set up the systems. They never actually have the database built properly so they can actually do that. And it's an idea that they have, but they never actually go through it and sell it. So it's great to see someone who's actually sold their business.
True.
So for you, the newsletters definitely works. It's worked for you. Has much changed from when you were doing newsletters in the very first place to now?
Really not much has. I mean, there is this new thing called the internet and email newsletters since I started in those days. And, and because of that, I've become pretty conversant about the differences between print newsletters and email newsletters, and have written quite a bit about that. And I will say that other than that piece of technology, the newsletter content itself has not changed.
Right. Okay.
And I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go along through this interview.
Okay, perfect. So I'll start off, why newsletters? What's the draw with it? Why do you use them? What's the effect that you get from it? And why was that something you used?
Think about it like this. As soon as you do a real estate transaction with somebody, no matter how important it was to them and no matter what your relationship was like with them, they are going to start to forget you within a few days of that transaction being closed. They're going to move on with their lives. They're going to get involved in their new house. They're going to think about you occasionally. But if you're not keeping in touch with them regularly, you're gone, out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
And I know that you will have people listening to this recording that will understand that they have lost a lot of business by not staying in touch with their past clients or centers of influence. And the newsletter is the single easiest way to do that, because by using a well-written, well-crafted direct response newsletter, you're going to be able to engage with people passively, so to speak.
Yep.
So you're going to let the newsletter do the engagement for you. And you just can't get that kind of an engagement any other way unless you're actually physically picking up the telephone and calling them every single month.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned the direct response part of it, because to me that's the critical part. We've had a couple guests on in the past. Kevin Baker was on talking about direct response marketing and online, and we had a copywriter talking about direct response. And to me, that's the integral part of what makes a newsletter work, is the direct response part. So can you touch base on that?
Sure. There's this idea that we have about newsletters that they're newsy and that they're somehow about the real estate industry. And the fact is, most people who get your newsletter are past clients or they're centers of influence, and they are not buying or selling real estate. People only buy or sell real estate every 5 to 7 years. So the chances of that person who's getting your newsletter actually being interested in real estate news or real estate information are pretty low.
Right.
So, in order to engage them, you want to engage them with lighthearted, interesting, informative content. I prefer the bite-sized content, especially these days as people get more and more used to things like Instagram and Pinterest, where they just have something quick. They can get in, they can look at it, they can get something, and they can get back out of it. That's what we like a newsletter to do. But that at the same time does not engage them with you as a real estate agent. And so that's where we pull in some direct response tools. One of the things I put into my newsletters is a lengthy report. Right. And I try to give it an interesting title, like How to Sell Your House in 24 Hours. And that lengthy report usually is about 1,500 words long, and that's very specific to real estate. And you'll just have one little box on the newsletter that calls their attention to this as a consumer report.
Right.
And that's an example, and then it invites them to send an email to you to get a copy of that report. That's an example of one form of direct response. Another form that I put into the newsletter is some sort of a contest. Now, in some areas, I will use a referral reward sort of contest. You send me referrals. If I set an appointment with somebody, or even if you just send me a name, I'll send you a gift.
Right.
And that's not legal in all areas. And so rather than that, in some places it's perfectly legal. I have a number of clients in New Zealand and Australia, and they love that.
Yep.
But then, so instead of doing that, then I will also do a quiz question contest. Send the response to the quiz question into the agent by email, and out of all the correct responses, that agent will then pick out one correct response and send them a $10 Starbucks card. And you run this month after month. Another one that I've run is send me your real estate question. Send me one real estate question, and I will enter you into a drawing. And I really like that one because it really gets people remembering that you're in real estate. And
right.
it could be as random as tell me how much the house next door to me sold for.
Right.
And then you can use the opportunity to answer that question in your newsletter as well as creating. So that's a way of creating direct response interaction in the newsletter. And then I've got a few other little direct response techniques that I sprinkle throughout my newsletters.
Yeah, and I think a lot of agents will have one side to the other, where the other is all about them. It's all branded about them, how awesome they are, how great they are. Or it's completely real estate stats, which bore the heck out of most people. Most people don't even know how to read the graphs and the bars and all that kind of stuff. And I find a lot of newsletters are on one scale or the other. And I think you need to kind of have a in between, a little bit about you, a little bit about real estate, and a little bit about just general stuff that people are interested in.
Sure.
So who should use newsletters then?
I think that anybody in business should use newsletters. Anybody who's in business for themselves, especially a service business, should be using newsletters. The difference in real estate is that we don't have a reason to encounter people over and over again in our daily, regular lives. We're not like a maid service, for example, who's in there every week.
Right.
And so we have to find a reason to get in front of people, and the newsletter is the best way. The real estate newsletter, I've written a blog post about this with the donor industry. The donor industry is a whole industry around how to get better, bigger donations for nonprofit organizations. So that's an entire industry, and they often discuss the pros and cons of using newsletters in order to generate donations. And I find that marketplace to be very parallel to real estate, because donors don't make big donations year after year. They make them every 3 years, every 7 years, every 10 years. But these guys have to stay in touch with these people throughout that entire time in order to maintain attention with them. Mm-hmm. So I do think that any real estate agent, especially residential real estate agents, can use them. And I do get calls all the time. I don't yet have the newsletter for this purpose, but I get calls all the time from commercial agents who are interested in a newsletter too. And so I do believe that commercial agents would benefit from the newsletter. And then I have a lot of investment real estate investor clients who also use newsletters.
Okay. I personally use yours now. I just started using it recently, and I love it. It's fantastic. I've seen a number of newsletters out there, and it's very simple to use. It's very easy to use. The content's very good, and it's very personal. You can personalize it if you want, and you can put your own flair on it. So I have to give my hats off to you for that, because I definitely am a fan of your newsletter. So you mentioned about the print versus online. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, you prefer more the print.
Well, you know what? It's not so much what I prefer. It's what works best for your business.
Right.
For example, in doing some coaching with a real estate agent in Carlsbad in California, this particular real estate agent he was a professional bicyclist, and so he would join these big races every year. And he also became one of the organizers of these races. And because he became one of the organizers, he had this big database, all email database of people who were interested in bike racing. And so I asked him how he uses this. Is he able to use it for his own personal gain, so to speak? And he said, I don't know. And then he tried it. So he sent out an email newsletter to this group and immediately got 3 transactions off that. Now, it was a group of 800 people. Wow. And they knew him through the bicycle community. Mm-hmm. And so he already had presence. He already had authority. He already had credibility. And so when he sent out the email newsletter, it was half biking. And, oh, by the way, let me talk to you a little bit about real estate. In his case, that's a perfect example of somebody who would never use print. He would only use email newsletters. But then on the other hand, you've got, the regular real estate agent out there who has clients who would be on email all the time, and then clients who never touch email. And I would suggest segmenting your database, looking at your database and saying, look, I've got a core of maybe 25 or 50 people, and these are my people who are always going to give me referrals. These are the big hitters, the people who are well connected or who really liked me. Excuse me, and I want to stay in touch with them in a special way, and I'm going to send them my print newsletter because I know that when I send them my print newsletter, they're going to take some time with that. Email newsletters, they might glance at it, click delete. They might open it and read the first segment and then click delete and never even get down into the meat. So email newsletters are great if you can mix them up with some other kind of personal content. But those print newsletters, that's the way to really stay in front of somebody. So if you've got a big database, go ahead and segment it out and pick out the ones to get your print newsletter, and then send everybody else an email newsletter. Yep.
Now, I wanted to ask you about that. Is it just for your people your Mets, or would you suggest using it for a farm area, or are you going to only send the print to people that you said that are hot on your list?
Now, I've never done this, but I do have a lot of clients who say that they print their newsletter out and they walk their farm with it. I'm a big fan of door knocking. And I've taken flyers around before, but I've never taken a newsletter around before. I think it's a wonderful idea if you're going to be farming a community. This becomes your great success stories with this. People who take the newsletter and then they brand it to that particular neighborhood. It might be the same newsletter that they use for their regular client base, yep, but they put a different title on there, like the Kensington Neighborhood News. Yep. And then one of the features they'll do with that is they might bring in a classified ad section. And, that really brings it into a kind of a level of interactivity that I like. So, yeah, I definitely recommend printing. If you can afford to print them out and you're a neighborhood farmer, then it's a terrific strategy.
That's actually a strategy that I just applied. That's part of the reason why I connected with you and got the newsletter. What I'm doing is I have a farm now of 1,000 townhomes. So I use direct response marketing for the first batch, requesting a report for neighborhood prices, and then of the 1,000 people, I had 50 people request that. So I door knocked the neighborhood and said I created this report, and now what I'm going to do is drop off a monthly update report on the market as well as the newsletter, and then a letter just either giving an offer, just touching base with them. So now I've got those 50 people who are going to be getting that newsletter. So I'm not going to send it to all 1,000, but it's those 50 people now that I want to have a higher touch with and build more relationships with them.
You've built that. You've made that initial contact. Now you let the newsletter continue to build the relationship for you.
Exactly. Yep. And it's been working very well so far. I'm in month 3 now, and it's just been a fantastic approach. So yeah.
Oh well, I'm looking forward to hearing about your results.
I'll let you know at the end of the year how things have gone, and I definitely keep track of my numbers, so I'll tell you exactly how it went.
Great.
So I want to talk about having the benefit of having someone else create it for you, because I know I have friends who've tried to do their own newsletters. They intend to get them done, and they never get them done, or they struggle to come up with content. Obviously, since you create newsletters, you see the value in it, but can you talk a bit about why it's important to have someone just have it done and get it done every month?
You know, I'm the kind of, I totally, completely understand people who want to do things themselves. And especially entrepreneurs, we like to have our hands in everything, and we like it to be our way, darn it. We don't want it to be different. We want it to look like us, feel like us. We are certain that what we put into that newsletter will make a bigger difference than anybody else could possibly make. I know that.
Yeah.
I wrote my own newsletter for all those years when I was in Salt Lake, when I was starting business. And that's part of how I learned to write newsletters, was the hard way. But because of that, I can say that because I've seen my own newsletter efforts over the years change, and what I've put in them, and what I've seen work and not work, and then all the other newsletters out there that I research and that I collect. And even I even write newsletters for a lot of companies that turn around and then resell them, and I'm not always happy with the content that they want in them. But all that said, I will say that the honest truth is you could almost send a single sheet of paper with your name on it and nothing else. But if you sent it month after month after month, it would do the job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? That it's the keeping in touch that matters, not so much exactly what your newsletter says that matters.
Yep.
Okay, so that sounds like I'm shooting myself in the foot, because I have put so much thought into how these newsletters work. But I will say this, one thing that doesn't work, and one thing that I have seen over and over get newsletters trashed, is real estate content.
Yeah.
As soon as you start filling your real estate newsletter with real estate content, it's out of there.
Yeah. I heard a stat that I think at any given time, 1% of the population is thinking about real estate. So if you're trying to force real estate information down their throat, they really don't care.
Yeah, they don't.
So, yeah.
You know, an example I use is I get a newsletter from my financial planner. Every single month she sends me an e-newsletter. And I happen to like her. I know her personally. I send her my print newsletter. But she sends me this e-newsletter, and I can tell that it is produced by a financial planning marketing firm. And, you know, I started to look at it just out of a sense of loyalty initially.
Yeah.
And then I realized there was absolutely nothing in there I cared about. Not in the least. There was nothing personal from her. It didn't feel personal. It didn't have any of her personality into it. And that's what I do differently in my newsletter. Feels very personal. It's very chatty and friendly. I also, and you know this from seeing them yourselves, to make it as easy as possible for people to use, I incorporate their email and their telephone number and other content into the newsletter itself, and I highlight in red anything that they need to change. Yeah. So their phone number is highlighted in red. It's just a placeholder inside the newsletter when they get it. And all they have to do is go through the newsletter and change that phone number, change that email, change the names of people that they want to mention in their newsletter. I even have a placeholder for that, so that it becomes a tool for them that looks like came from them, because they're integrated throughout the newsletter.
It gives you the chance to personalize it. You don't even have, you can just put your information and send it out as is, but if you want to edit it a little more, you can do that, which is what I like about it as well. You can.
Me too. Being a fiddler, I like to change the colors. I like to, to brand it a little bit, put my logo on there, and you can do all that with mine. It's created in Word frames. They're a little tricky, but I include a little cheat sheet for you. If you want to change the articles, you're welcome to do that. Pull one of the articles out and then replace it if you like to do a letter from the editor kind of thing, yep. Which I don't recommend calling a letter from the editor, by the way.
Virus database has been updated.
You could call it, you don't have to call it anything. You could just say, hey, here's what I've been up to lately, and then sign it. Yep. But again, just making it as personal as possible, but using the already created newsletter gives you the flexibility, I guess, if you will, of having it already done for you,
Yep.
minimally customizing it and getting it out the door
Yep.
versus spending 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sometimes days trying to create your newsletter every month.
Yep. And the nice thing was you can build onto it and add to it. Like you've got the insert you can add in, so if people want to add in their own insert, they can customize that as well. So they got custom if they want listings, or if they want to bring in, like you said, bring in classified ads or neighborhood information and that kind of stuff. You can insert another middle insert and add to it and build onto it if you do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ryan. People do like to put their listings into their newsletters. Frankly, I think that is to build credibility, not to sell a listing.
Yeah.
It just reminds people you're in real estate. You put these houses, you can put anybody's houses in there. They're not going to call you about those listings. But by putting them in, you're reminding people that you are in real estate and that you've got this level of credibility. So if you're a brand new agent and you don't have your own listings, use listings from your office in there. That's fine.
Yep.
I've seen people use the flyer as a just a general marketing tool. Maybe they've got something they want to give away, and so they make a single flyer just for their giveaway.
Yep.
Or if there's an upcoming event, there's an Easter egg hunt or something coming, you could put out a flyer just for that neighborhood inside your newsletter. It's another way of creating interaction, so that's why I created the extra flyer. It's just kind of a blank flyer with the header up at the top that allows to easily insert that specialized content.
Well, one of the past guests, Jenny Wiemert, she does farming. She dominates her farm. In her first year, she did 80%. She had 80% market share in her little neighborhood of 400 homes. And she said for 12 or 13 years, she's been sending her newsletter every month. And she said it works like a charm, and people come to expect it. And if she said if you miss a beat, people are on it. They want their newsletter. They know that they didn't get it, so it definitely works. She said I wouldn't be doing it for 12 or 13 years if it didn't work. So newsletters definitely have their place.
Yeah, right on.
Obviously, we talked about some of the good strategies. What are some of the bad strategies other than just real estate topic or real estate information? Is there anything that you see that people do that you wouldn't suggest or wouldn't recommend?
I'm not a big fan of the pre-made newsletters where you slap your information on a header, and it's kind of your business photo right up at the top with a big header with your company name on it, and it's kind of like, let's say you're Century 21 and you've got gold and black header up there across the top with your smiling face and 6 phone numbers and 10 email addresses and your websites and your giveaways, and all that stuff just makes you look corporate.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the big mistakes people make in newsletters is looking too corporate. And so again, my newsletter is purposefully designed, it's attractive, but it's purposefully designed not to look like it came from a marketing company.
Yep. It's funny because I was showing my friend Adam in the office. There's I don't know if you guys have it where you are. It's a Coffee Time News. It's a advertisement that people use in little stores and stuff like that. And,
sure.
Basically, it's just an advertising platform, and there's, I would say, 50% at least is just little classified ad type ads on the front, on the back, and everything. And as soon as you see it, it just screams advertising. You pick it up. And
yeah.
We were just talking about, like, if I showed my newsletter, I said, if someone was to see this newsletter and see this newsletter, there's a complete difference. The reaction of what you get, and people won't even pick up the advertising one.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant way to put it. It doesn't look like an advertising piece.
Yep. So for you do you print them yourself? Do you get them printed from like another company, or what's your strategy, or what do you think people should be doing?
You know what? You depending on how many you print. I mean, Ryan, you're doing a farm, so you print off large quantities. But for people who are trying to bootstrap themselves into their business, I like to call it operating on limited resources. Yep. So if you're operating on limited resources and you don't have a lot of money to put into it, just find your top 20 people or your top 10 people and print your newsletters off on your office printer. And by the way, you can print them in grayscale. That works just as well. If you don't want to invest in color, that's fine. Just print them in black and white. But just print them on your office computer there. It just costs you, what, I think 20 cents to print a color copy. And then your postage is whatever your postage is for your area. Now, I do have people who mail 4,000 at a time.
Wow.
And they will have me advise them on companies, mailing companies.
Right.
And one of the big ones that I like to use, I'm not promoting them in any way other than to say I've never had a problem with them and they're pretty cheap, is Vistaprint.
Right.
Vistaprint.com. And so they always print correctly, they're inexpensive, and they get things back to you on time. So it's a great company to use for your printing. As for your postage, depending on your postal service, there might be a process you can use for bulk mailing that will lower your costs.
Yep.
But for most people, they're mailing out 20 to 50 of these, and they just send them regular first-class postage.
Yep. And yeah, it's going to depend on who your target audience is and what you're going after. So, have you ever tracked how many deals you should be getting, or like how many referrals you should be getting from these? Like, people want to know. Most people want to know return on investment. So, do you have those kind of numbers?
I don't have numbers from the return on investment on the newsletters themselves. I will say this though: out of every three people that you develop a relationship with in real estate, you should get between 1 and 5 transactions out of those people. Excuse me. Out of every 3 people, you should get 1 to 5 transactions over the next 5 years.
Right. Yep.
So I always think about it. Okay, of these, if I'm looking at 3 names in front of me, I know that these 3 names are money. I'm going to get 1 to 5 transactions out of these 3 names. And so I just look at it that way and go, okay, so I've got 9 people in my database. 9 people are getting my newsletter. That means I'm getting 3 to 15 transactions out of these 9 people over the next 5 years. And I just multiply it by 3.
The Millionaire Real Estate Agent says for your Mets, people that you know, for every 12 people you have in there, you should be getting 1 deal or 2 deals per year. So
per year,
that? So 6 people, you get 1 deal for every 6. So yeah, it's about the same numbers.
Right. And and I've worked with some great coaches who do a lot of training in generating referrals, and the newsletter is one of their key strategies.
I've always had the desire to put the newsletter in. I've tried different ones and I never did it consistently. And when I found your service, I was very happy with it because it's easy to do. It's a no-brainer. It comes out every month. I don't have to think about it. So it's a simple way to just get it done, and you don't have to think about it.
And Ryan, let's not forget how affordable it is.
I'll let you talk about it too. So,
you know what? One of the things that I know, because I do write newsletters for other companies that then turn around and resell them to real estate agents, and I'm not going to say who for obvious reasons.
Yep.
But I know that real estate company or newsletter companies are turning around and charging between $47 and $97 a month for the newsletters that I provide. And they have many clients. They have 1,000 to 5,000 clients, some of them depending on the company, newsletter clients at these prices at $47 to $97 a month. And I know they're not getting much more than what I'm giving them, and the cost of my newsletter, I go on the Netflix principle. So the cost of my newsletter is $9 a month.
And well worth it.
And well worth it.
Yeah, like I that's even without the cost. If I was paying $40 or $50 a month, it'd be worth it. But the $9 a month, again, if you're a good agent, if you're worth $50 or $100 an hour, if you spent more than an hour designing it, you've more than covered the cost.
Yeah, and my goal is for agents to be successful. I want this to just be something that you do. You don't think about.
Yep. And that's what I love about it. It comes out, it's done, it's ready to go. I put it into my strategy. It goes out on the first week of the month, and now I don't have to worry about it because I know it's going to be already ready before then, and I don't have to spend the time worrying about it.
And that's one reason that I call it fast newsletters.
So, yeah, why don't you take a bit and just say how people can find it and what they can get when they go on there.
You bet. So it's fairly simple. I don't make anything complex, nothing fancy. So it's fastnewsletters.com. And fastnewsletters.com doesn't contain the word real estate, but it is fast real estate newsletters. That's all I do is real estate newsletters. And once you go on there, you can read a little bit what you get in the newsletter. And just to reiterate that, it's a 4-page newsletter, completely customizable. The content is all original. I write it myself, and if I don't write it myself, I've taken it from public domain and then I've fixed it up. I've improved it, and I always cite where it came from if I've taken the content from somewhere else. But most of it is original. the client magnet reports that come with it that are referred to as consumer reports in the newsletter. I write those myself. They are original. Much of my content is, it comes from, almost 30 years in the real estate business and tremendous contacts in the real estate industry, as well as doing a lot of training and coaching, and really finding the kind of content that consumers will enjoy. And so I write with that in mind. I write smart newsletters. The content in there is hopefully interesting to your readers. It's not too fluffy. It's fluffy enough that they can get into it quickly, but I try to actually have it say something that they'll go, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a 4-page newsletter, original content. It's got the that extra flyer that you can use to easily insert content. You can customize your newsletter completely any way you like with your own colors. I include an instruction sheet in there to show you how to do that. And it comes with that client magnet report. And once you sign up for $9 a month, it's just going to come automatically on the 15th every month. You don't have to think about it. Once it comes, go ahead and customize it. It'll take you a couple of minutes to do it if you just want to do sending it off to your printer, your copy shop, and getting it out the door.
And the nice thing is you do it ahead. So it's the 15th. So for now, June's has already come out, so they'll have it ready for June. So it's not going into the next month.
Yeah. Yeah,
nice.
Thanks for reminding me that. So I try to get it. I do get it out on the 15th of the month prior to the month that you'll want to be sending it out.
So you're not rushing.
Yeah, and you're welcome to, if you drop by my website, fastnewsletters.com, you can see, you can read my blog. I'm gradually adding more posts about using newsletters in real estate, and you can read the topics of the client magnet reports that I have coming up. You can download the template for free. I'm happy for you to use it, play around with it. If you want to put your own content into it, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. And that's pretty much it. That is it. It's a simple tool. It's intended to be simple, but it has a lot of richness and complexity behind the scenes.
Okay, so you and I spoke earlier, and we talked about having a special giveaway. So why don't you tell the listeners what you're going to be giving away and what they can get?
Yes, absolutely. When you go to my website, you'll notice that you can download the template for free. So, just to say thank you to you, Ryan, and thank you to the people who are listening to you and wanting to grow their business, I'd like to give away a couple of free subscriptions. So 1-year subscriptions to Fast Newsletters. That means every month you're going to get the newsletter and all the extras that come with it for free. If you go on to the free template location in fastnewsletters.com, you'll find a little spot in there that you can fill out at the name of the source where you heard about Fast Newsletters from. And if you fill out that you heard about Fast Newsletters through the niche agent and Ryan Smith, then I will enter you into a drawing, and we'll have that drawing within the next couple of weeks. And then I'll notify you if you've won. And 2 people who enter the niche agent into that little blank on the free template spot will get a free subscription.
Awesome. We appreciate that, and the listeners will definitely appreciate that. And if you don't win, don't be cheap. Spend the $9 a month because it's well worth it. So, I just spend the money. It's a no-brainer. Once they see it and get a copy of that template, they'll see how easy it is. And if they don't do it, then my listeners aren't as smart as I thought they were. So,
oh, yeah, they are.
They are.
All right, Ryan.
Okay. So, I appreciate you being on the show. So, if people are interested, just to wrap up again, how can they get a hold of you? Where can they check out your website, and what's the best way to find out what you're doing?
Yeah, just hop on to fastnewsletters.com. Fastnewsletters.com. Easy as that.
All right, Linda, I appreciate it, and our listeners appreciate it. So, thank you for your insights, and it was great having you on the show.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.